Some of the darkest stories in the galaxy begin not with grand ambitions, but with loyalty. For Savage Opress, his journey into darkness started with something pure, a brother's love. On the mysterious planet Dathomir, where crimson skies loom over shadowy forests, Savage was born to Mother Talzin, leader of the Nightsisters, a clan of force-wielding witches who commanded dark magics. The men of Dathomir lived apart in villages of the Night Brothers. There, Savage grew up alongside his brothers Maul and Feral. While they shared the same yellow skin and distinctive facial markings common to their Zabrak heritage, their paths would diverge dramatically. Maul was taken from Dathomir as a child by the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, vanishing into the stars. But Savage and Feral remained, building lives together in their remote village. Over time, Savage rose to become a tribal leader among his people. Strong, capable, and respected, he lived by the harsh codes of Dathomir, where survival demanded both physical prowess and unwavering loyalty to clan and kin. But the Night Brothers existed in servitude to the Nightsisters, a relationship built on ancient tradition and enforced through both fear and magic. This balance of power would soon tip, changing Savage's life forever. When the Clone Wars erupted across the galaxy, the conflict eventually reached even remote Dathomir. Asajj Ventress, once the trusted assassin of Count Dooku, returned to her homeworld burning with thoughts of vengeance after being betrayed by her Sith master. She came to the Night Brother village with a singular purpose: to find the perfect warrior who would help her exact revenge against Dooku. The selection process Ventress imposed was nothing short of barbaric. Dozens of Night Brother warriors were forced to participate in trials that tested not just their combat skills, but their very will to survive. Many died during these challenges, their bodies left broken on the dusty ground of the trial arenas. Fighting with spears, chains, and their bare hands, the Night Brothers faced both each other and deadly obstacles designed to eliminate all but the strongest among them. Throughout these brutal trials, something remarkable became apparent. Savage wasn't just fighting for himself, he was protecting his younger brother Feral at every turn. When opponents targeted the smaller, less imposing Feral, Savage would position himself as a shield. When challenges required teamwork, Savage ensured Feral survived alongside him. This wasn't just strategy, it was devotion. Ventress noticed this bond and saw something she could exploit. As the number of candidates dwindled, she pitted the brothers against each other in increasingly dangerous scenarios. Savage continuously demonstrated not only incredible physical strength and combat instinct, but also quick thinking and resourcefulness. He emerged as the clear frontrunner, his yellow skin covered in the dust and blood of battle, but his resolve unbroken. In the final trial, when only a handful of warriors remained, Savage boldly approached Ventress. Where others cowered, he looked her in the eye and made a request that showed both courage and compassion. He asked that his brother Feral be spared, offering himself fully in service if only his brother could live. This moment of vulnerability, this exposure of what he truly cared about, sealed both their fates. Ventress selected Savage as her champion, but her plans for him required more than just his natural abilities. She brought him to Mother Talzin, who prepared an ancient and terrible ritual. In a chamber lit by green magical flames, Night Sister witches gathered around Savage, who floated suspended in the air as their dark incantations began to physically transform him. The magic of the Nightsisters flowed into Savage's body, twisting and enhancing him beyond natural limits. His already impressive frame expanded dramatically, muscles swelling with unnatural power. He grew taller, broader, his horns elongating into sharp points that crowned his head like a headdress. Most significantly, his connection to the Force, always present but untrained, surged with dark side energy, giving him abilities he'd never dreamed possible. But the transformation wasn't complete. To ensure his absolute loyalty and to sever all previous attachments, Ventress orchestrated one final cruel test. She brought Feral before the newly transformed Savage and gave a simple command: kill him. For a brief moment, recognition flickered in Savage's eyes. The magical influence wasn't absolute. Somewhere inside he knew this was his beloved brother. But the spell and his new loyalty to Ventress overrode everything else. With massive hands that had once protected Feral countless times, Savage now wrapped them around his brother's throat. The life slowly drained from Feral's eyes as Savage completed his transformation not just physically, but spiritually, becoming something monstrous in body and deed. The tribal leader who had risked everything to protect his family was gone. In his place stood a towering engine of destruction, his mind clouded by Nightsister magic and dark side energy. Mother Talzin outfitted this new weapon with armor befitting his status and placed in his hands a double-bladed lightsaber created by the Nightsisters that hummed with lethal potential. Savage Opress, now an instrument of vengeance, was presented to Count Dooku as a gift from Mother Talzin. The ruse was complete. Dooku believed he was receiving a new apprentice, a replacement for the treacherous Ventress. In reality, Savage carried within him a secret loyalty to both Ventress and Talzin, programmed to turn on Dooku when the moment was right. As Savage left his homeworld behind, boarding a ship that would take him to Count Dooku's service, the red skies of Dathomir faded behind him. Ahead lay a path of destruction, betrayal, and pain that would challenge even his magically enhanced body and spirit. The galaxy would soon learn to fear the name Savage Opress, never knowing that his journey into darkness began with the purest of intentions, a brother's love. The transition from tribal warrior to Sith apprentice is rarely a gentle one. For Savage Opress, his entry into Count Dooku's service was baptism by fire. Fresh from his transformation on Dathomir, Savage arrived at Dooku's palace on Sereno as a gift from Mother Talzin. The Count, always seeking advantages in his war against the Republic, saw potential in this hulking Zabrak warrior. But potential means nothing to the Sith without proof. Dooku wasted no time testing his new enforcer. The peaceful world of Deveron became the stage for Savage's debut mission. The Republic had established a presence at the Temple of Edith, an ancient site strong in the Force. Savage's task was simple, yet brutal: eliminate this Republic outpost completely. When Savage arrived on Deveron, the Republic forces had no idea what they were facing. Clone troopers, trained from birth for combat, found themselves outmatched by this single warrior. Savage tore through their ranks like a storm, his enhanced strength allowing him to toss armored men aside as if they were toys. Bodies scattered across the temple grounds as he advanced relentlessly toward his targets. The Jedi stationed at the temple, Master Halsey and his Padawan Nox, sensed the disturbance and rushed to confront this new threat. They had faced separatist forces before, but nothing like Savage. With minimal training in the dark side, Savage relied on his raw power and instincts. The Jedi's elegant lightsaber techniques meant little against his overwhelming physical might. In minutes, both master and apprentice lay dead, their lightsabers silent. Savage had claimed his first Jedi kills, a milestone that marked him as a truly dangerous force in the galaxy. Dooku was pleased, but far from satisfied. The Count recognized that brute force alone would not fulfill his grand ambitions. Savage had potential, yes, but it was unrefined, like a vibroblade without an edge. The real training would now begin. Within the walls of his fortress on Sereno, Dooku subjected Savage to rigorous Sith instruction. Gone was the spear Savage had initially carried. In its place, he now wielded the double-bladed lightsaber created for him by the Nightsisters. The weapon, similar to the one Darth Maul once wielded, was notoriously difficult to master. One wrong move could slice its wielder in half as easily as an enemy. But Dooku saw it as fitting for Savage's aggressive fighting style. Their training sessions were merciless affairs. Dooku, a master of the elegant Makashi lightsaber form, found Savage technique sloppy and uncontrolled. While sparring, the Count would easily defeat his apprentice, pointing out each mistake with stinging criticism. Where Savage relied on power, Dooku demonstrated precision. Where Savage attacked directly, Dooku showed him the value of subtlety and misdirection. The training extended beyond lightsaber combat. Dooku pushed Savage to develop his connection to the Force, particularly its darker aspects: anger, fear, hatred. These emotions were not to be controlled, but channeled, focused like fuel into a reactor. Yet even here, Savage struggled with the finer applications of Force power. This frustration came to a head during an outdoor training session on the castle grounds. Dooku arranged a dozen massive stone obelisks in the courtyard, demanding that Savage lift them all simultaneously through telekinesis. For a trained Sith or Jedi master, such a feat would be challenging but achievable. For Savage, still new to conscious Force manipulation, it proved impossible. As Savage strained, managing to raise only a few stones unsteadily into the air, Dooku showed no patience for failure. Blue lightning erupted from the Count's fingertips, coursing through Savage's body. The pain was excruciating, dropping him to his knees. Yet rather than break him, this punishment fed something dark growing inside the Zabrak warrior. Each bolt of lightning, each cutting remark, each defeat in training fueled his resentment. This emotional reservoir became something Savage could draw upon, making him stronger in the dark side, even as it bound him tighter to his suffering. Dooku's cruel conditioning continued for weeks, punctuated by missions that tested Savage's developing abilities. The most significant of these took him to Toydaria, home of the flying Toydarian species. King Katunko had become a person of interest to Dooku, who wanted the monarch captured alive for leverage against the Republic. Savage infiltrated the royal palace with surprising stealth for someone of his size. The king's guards, though loyal and well-trained, fell quickly to his lightsaber. When he finally cornered King Katunko, Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker and Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived to protect the monarch. Their unexpected appearance complicated Savage's mission considerably. This confrontation should have been the end for a newly trained dark acolyte. Skywalker was known throughout the galaxy for his aggressive fighting style and raw power, while Kenobi was a master defender whose technique had defeated a Sith Lord years before. Together, they represented one of the most effective fighting teams in the Jedi Order. In a moment of rage and frustration, Savage lashed out, force choking the Toydarian king. Whether intentional or due to his lack of control, the pressure proved too much for the delicate monarch, who died in Savage's invisible grip. With his mission to capture the king alive now a failure, Savage snatched up the king's body and fought to escape. The momentary triumph evaporated when he returned to Dooku. The Count had specifically ordered the king taken alive, and Savage's failure earned him another session of torture via force lightning. As he writhed in pain, begging for mercy, Dooku delivered a chilling lesson. Mercy was not the way of the dark side. What Savage couldn't know was that his suffering served a larger purpose in Dooku's grand strategy. The Count wasn't merely training a new assassin. He was preparing a weapon to use against his own master, Darth Sidious. In the tradition of the Sith, apprentice must eventually challenge master. Dooku saw Savage as a potential asset in this inevitable confrontation, a powerful ally who might tip the scales in his favor when the time came to seize control of the galaxy. This web of manipulation and betrayal foreshadowed the cycle that would define Savage's existence. Used by Ventress, abused by Dooku, each master exploiting him for their own ends. Yet beneath the pain and servitude, something was awakening in Savage Opress, something that would soon break free, with consequences none of his masters could foresee. Even the most loyal servant can be pushed too far. For Savage Opress, that moment arrived in the aftermath of his failed mission to Toydaria. As he knelt before Count Dooku, enduring another round of force lightning punishment, the true nature of his situation was about to become painfully clear. The doors to Dooku's chamber slid open, revealing a figure Savage recognized immediately, Asajj Ventress. Her arrival wasn't a rescue, but the culmination of a plan set in motion months before on Dathomir. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the opportunity to strike at her former master when he least expected it. Ventress revealed her hidden control over Savage, activating the Nightsister magic that compelled his obedience. With a few words, she turned Dooku's prized enforcer against him. The Count found himself suddenly fighting a battle on two fronts, facing both his former apprentice and his newest acolyte. The initial attack caught Dooku off guard. Savage and Ventress coordinated their assault with surprising effectiveness, pushing the Sith Lord back. For a brief moment, it seemed the revenge plot might actually succeed. Savage's raw power complemented Ventress's speed and agility, creating a dangerous combination that even a duelist of Dooku's caliber struggled to counter. But Count Dooku had not survived decades as a Sith by being easily defeated. As the fight progressed, he regained his composure and began to demonstrate why he was considered one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. His force lightning struck Savage repeatedly, weakening the giant warrior with each blast. The pain was familiar by now, but no less intense. Ventress, seeing her advantage slipping away, grew desperate. She berated Savage, demanding he finish Dooku despite the obvious toll the force lightning was taking on him. Her commands grew harsher, her tone more demeaning as she treated him as nothing more than a tool for her vengeance. In that critical moment, something shifted inside Savage Opress. Caught between Dooku's lightning and Ventress's verbal abuse, subjected to pain from one master and scorn from another, he reached his breaking point. The rage that had been building through weeks of mistreatment crystallized into something new: resistance. With a roar that seemed to shake the room, Savage did something neither Dooku nor Ventress expected. He extended both arms and force choked them simultaneously, lifting both Sith off the ground. The spell of control that Ventress had placed on him shattered as his own will reasserted itself. For the first time since his transformation on Dathomir, Savage Opress acted not as anyone's servant, but as his own master. The shock on their faces was visible even as they struggled for breath. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Nightsister magic was ancient and powerful. No one should have been able to break free through sheer force of will. Yet Savage had done exactly that, his fury proving stronger than their control. He hurled both of them against opposite walls and attacked with newfound ferocity. Neither Dooku nor Ventress had anticipated fighting Savage at his full potential, unrestrained by loyalty or magical compulsion. The battle that followed damaged much of Dooku's chamber as Savage unleashed everything he had learned, enhanced by the pure rage of betrayal. Eventually, both Dooku and Ventress managed to push him back, using their superior training and experience with the Force. Realizing he couldn't win this fight, Dooku made a tactical retreat. Ventress, seeing her revenge plan in shambles, pursued him, leaving Savage alone and truly free for the first time since his transformation. But his path to freedom was far from clear. To escape Dooku's fortress, Savage would need to fight his way through not only battle droids, but also the two Jedi who had tracked him from Toydaria, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The situation would have been impossible for most warriors, but Savage was no longer thinking tactically. He was simply fighting to escape, to survive, to be free of all who would control him. The ensuing battle through the corridors of Dooku's palace was chaos in motion. Savage bulldozed through squads of battle droids, their mechanical bodies offering little resistance to his lightsaber and physical strength. When he encountered the Jedi, he didn't engage in prolonged combat, but focused on creating openings to continue his escape. He used force pushes to clear his path, sending both Jedi flying backward when they attempted to block his way. His single-minded determination paid off. Despite facing some of the most skilled fighters in the galaxy, Savage reached the hangar bay and commandeered a ship. As he blasted away from Sereno, he left behind not just a fortress, but the role that had been forced upon him. He was no longer anyone's apprentice or assassin. With nowhere else to turn, Savage set course for the one place that had answers before: Dathomir. The Crimson Planet called to him not as home, but as the only source of truth he knew. When he arrived at the Nightsister fortress, he sought out Mother Talzin, the architect of his transformation. His anger at Ventress's betrayal was clear as he confronted Talzin. She listened calmly, neither surprised nor concerned by the failure of their plot against Dooku. It was as if she had anticipated this outcome, or perhaps had plans that extended beyond this single attempt at revenge. When Savage finished venting his frustration, Talzin revealed something that changed everything. Looking into his eyes, she told him a truth that had been hidden from him. He had another brother, one who still lived. This brother wasn't Ferrell, whom Savage had killed with his own hands, but someone else. someone lost to them years ago. The news stunned Savage. All this time, through his transformation and training, through pain and betrayal, he had believed Feral was his only brother. Now he learned that another existed somewhere in the far reaches of the Outer Rim, living in exile. The revelation sparked something new in Savage: purpose. Talzin didn't just offer information, she provided means. From her collection of mystical objects, she presented Savage with the Talisman of Finding. This ancient device, imbued with Nightsister magic, would guide him to his lost brother. The talisman glowed with an eerie light as Talzin explained its power, promising that it would lead Savage true if he followed its guidance faithfully. She spoke of this brother with reverence, suggesting he possessed knowledge and power that could help Savage reach his full potential. This brother would teach him everything he needed to know, making him stronger than either Dooku or Ventress could have. The implication was clear. Finding this brother wasn't just about family, it was about destiny. With the talisman in hand and a new mission before him, Savage left Dathomir once more. The pull of the magical object led him deep into the Outer Rim, far from the usual space lanes and civilized worlds. His search eventually brought him to Lotho Minor, a planet that barely deserved the name. From orbit, Lotho Minor appeared as little more than a massive junkyard. Its surface was covered with the discarded waste of 1,000 worlds, mountains of scrap metal and abandoned technology stretching to every horizon. The atmosphere was toxic in places, acid rain falling regularly to corrode the endless fields of garbage. As Savage landed his ship on this desolate world, the talisman glowed brighter than ever. Somewhere amid this wasteland was his brother, surviving somehow in this most unlikely of places. The mission that began with his breaking free from Dooku and Ventress now led him to this literal mountain of refuse, searching for family he never knew he had. Stepping onto the surface of Lotho Minor, Savage Opress was no longer a pawn in someone else's game. He moved with purpose, following the light of the talisman deeper into the labyrinth of junk and wreckage. Whatever or whoever he found here would set him on yet another new path, one that he chose for himself rather than having it forced upon him. As Savage trudged through fields of twisted metal and broken droids, he encountered few living beings. Most were scavengers keeping their distance from the imposing Zabrak warrior. But one creature approached him directly, an anacondan named Morley. Long and serpentine with an ever-present grin, Morley slithered up to Savage with offers of assistance. The anacondan claimed to know every tunnel and crevice of Lotho Minor. At first, Savage dismissed him, preferring to rely on the talisman alone. But as Morley continued talking, mentioning that he had seen another being like Savage somewhere in the junkyards, the warrior's interest was piqued. Reluctantly, Savage accepted Morley as his guide. The partnership was uneasy from the start. Savage neither trusted nor liked the serpentine creature, but practical necessity won out. Lotho Minor was a labyrinth of danger. Junkers, the violent native scavengers, attacked them at various points throughout their journey. Savage dispatched them easily with his lightsaber, but their persistence proved annoying. The physical challenges of the planet presented additional obstacles. Sudden downpours of acid rain forced them to seek shelter in the tunnels below the surface. These tunnel networks, formed by linking together the hollow husks of crashed starships and industrial containers, created a maze beneath the garbage plains. Without Morley's guidance, Savage might have wandered these passages for months. The talisman continued to glow brighter as they progressed, confirming they were heading in the right direction. After days of searching, they reached what Morley claimed was their destination. The Anacondan brought Savage to a particular section of the tunnels, indicating that what he sought was nearby. The talisman glowed intensely, supporting Morley's claim. But as Savage stepped forward to investigate, the ground beneath him suddenly gave way. The collapse wasn't natural. Morley had led him onto a carefully disguised trapdoor. As Savage fell into the darkness below, he heard Morley's mocking voice echo after him, admitting his betrayal. The Anacondan called down that Savage would soon meet his master, though he didn't specify whose master he meant. The implication was clear. Savage had been delivered as prey. Landing hard in a lower tunnel, Savage quickly regained his footing and ignited his lightsaber, illuminating the darkness with its red glow. The tunnel stretched before him, littered with bones and scraps of metal. Something lived down here, something that hunted and killed regularly. Drawing on his training and heightened senses, Savage moved cautiously forward. The attack came suddenly from the shadows. A creature lunged at him, moving with surprising speed on what appeared to be mechanical legs. Savage blocked the initial assault, catching glimpses of his attacker in the lightsaber's glow. What he saw defied easy description, a being that seemed cobbled together, part organic, part mechanical. Its lower body consisted of a spider-like arrangement of metal legs, scavenged and attached to a torso that seemed vaguely familiar. As they fought in the confined space, Savage gradually got a better look at his opponent. The creature's upper body was humanoid, with red and black skin marked with distinctive patterns. Its face, though twisted with madness and rage, bore the unmistakable features of a Zabrak. With shocking clarity, Savage realized he was fighting his own brother. This was Maul, not as Savage remembered him, but transformed by years of isolation and suffering. His eyes burned with insanity, and he babbled incoherently as he attacked. There was no recognition in those eyes, no sign that Maul understood who stood before him. He was operating on pure animal instinct, driven by pain and hunger. Savage called out his brother's name, trying to break through the madness. Maul paused briefly at the sound, tilting his head as if hearing something familiar yet distant. Taking advantage of this moment, Savage deactivated his lightsaber and approached slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. Maul retreated slightly, but didn't attack again. With patience born of his own suffering, Savage began the difficult process of earning his feral brother's trust. He spoke in calm, even tones, repeating Maul's name and identifying himself as family. Progress came in tiny increments. Maul allowed Savage closer, then accepted small offerings of food. Hours stretched into a full day as Savage maintained his position, never rushing, never threatening. Eventually, Maul led Savage deeper into his lair, a cavern he had created from the surrounding junk. Here, scattered among the bones of previous meals, were items that spoke of a mind not completely lost. Crude drawings scratched into metal plates, arranged patterns of scraps that suggested meaning, and most tellingly, what appeared to be attempts to recreate a lightsaber from salvaged parts. Savage questioned his brother gently, trying to understand how he had ended up here and what had happened to him. Maul's responses were fragmented, jumping between moments of lucidity and stretches of rambling nonsense. But certain words appeared consistently: Jedi, hatred, revenge. and one name repeated with particular venom: Kenobi. Gradually, Savage pieced together the story. Years ago on Naboo, Maul had faced Obi-Wan Kenobi in battle and been defeated catastrophically, cut in half by the Jedi's lightsaber. Somehow, through hatred so intense it defied death itself, Maul had survived. He had ended up on Lotho Minor, where he constructed crude mechanical legs from scavenged parts and lived as a predator in the tunnels, his once brilliant mind fractured by trauma and isolation. Before Savage could learn more, a familiar voice interrupted them. Morley had slithered into the cavern, apparently coming to check if his master had finished his meal. The Anacondan froze in shock upon seeing both Zabraks alive and relatively peaceful. Realizing his deception had been discovered, Morley attempted to talk his way out of the situation, claiming he had actually been helping all along. Savage wasn't in a forgiving mood. With swift brutality, he killed Morley for his betrayal, ending the Anacondan's life as casually as swatting an insect. This display of violence seemed to resonate with Maul, who watched with approval in his eyes, perhaps the first genuine emotion beyond rage he had shown. With the decision made to leave Lotho Minor behind, Savage faced the challenge of transporting his brother. Maul's mental state made him unpredictable, and his spider-like lower body wasn't well suited for conventional travel. Nevertheless, Savage managed to guide him back through the tunnels and across the junk fields to his ship. Throughout the journey, he spoke to Maul of Dathomir and Mother Talzin, promising help and restoration. The return to Dathomir marked a new chapter for both brothers. Mother Talzin welcomed them to her fortress, showing particular interest in Maul. She recognized her son immediately, despite his altered state and the years that had passed since he was taken from her by Darth Sidious. Talzin's powers went far beyond simple spell casting. In a chamber lit by green flames similar to those that had transformed Savage, she began the process of healing Maul. The ritual was complex, drawing on the deepest aspects of Nightsister magic. Talzin focused first on Maul's mind, using her powers to repair the psychological damage inflicted by years of suffering and isolation. As Maul's consciousness cleared, Talzin turned her attention to his body. The crude mechanical spider legs were removed, replaced with more elegant and functional cybernetic limbs. These new legs, while still mechanical, allowed Maul to move with something approaching his former grace and agility. When the ritual concluded, the Maul who stood before Savage was transformed. Gone was the feral creature from the tunnels of Lotho Minor. In his place stood a warrior with clear eyes and focused purpose. His mind was sharp once more, his memories intact, and his abilities with the Force restored. This was the brother Savage had been seeking, a being of power who could guide him to greater heights. With his faculties restored, Maul revealed the depth of his hatred for Kenobi and the Jedi. The defeat on Naboo hadn't just cost him his legs, it had robbed him of his destiny as Darth Sidious's apprentice and his place in the galaxy. For over a decade, he had existed in a limbo of pain and madness, sustained only by his desire for revenge. Savage pledged himself to his brother's cause without hesitation. The bond between them, forged through shared blood and suffering, created a partnership more meaningful than any Savage had experienced before. Unlike his relationships with Ventress and Dooku, this alliance wasn't built on coercion or manipulation. It was a choice freely made. Mother Talzin, having completed her work, left the brothers to forge their own path. She had restored Maul and reunited her sons. What they did with their combined strength was now up to them. As Maul began planning his revenge against Kenobi, Savage stood ready at his side, no longer a pawn, but a willing partner in the violence to come. Brothers reunited, minds aligned in purpose, Maul and Savage wasted no time setting their vengeful plans in motion. Their first target was obvious: Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi who had left Maul broken and abandoned on Naboo years before. But drawing out a Jedi Master required more than simply challenging him. It required bait. The peaceful planet of Raydonia became their hunting ground. The brothers descended upon a small settlement, methodically slaughtering its inhabitants. This wasn't combat or even conquest. It was cold-blooded execution designed to create a beacon of suffering that no Jedi could ignore. After the massacre, they transmitted a message across the galaxy, calling for Kenobi specifically. The message reached its intended recipient. When Kenobi arrived on Raydonia, he found exactly what the brothers had intended: a trap. Maul and Savage ambushed the Jedi Master in the ruins of the town they had destroyed, working in tandem using coordinated attacks that showcased both their individual strengths and their effectiveness as a unit. They quickly overwhelmed Kenobi, knocking him unconscious. They took him prisoner aboard their ship, beginning a torture session designed not to kill, but to prolong suffering. Maul wanted Kenobi to experience a fraction of the agony he had endured for over a decade. But fate intervened in an unexpected form: Asajj Ventress. The former Nightsister, now working as a bounty hunter, arrived seeking to claim the substantial reward on Savage's head. The ensuing battle inside the cramped confines of the ship created an unlikely alliance between Kenobi and Ventress, former enemies now fighting together for survival. Despite the brothers' advantage in raw power, the combined skill of the Jedi and former Sith apprentice proved sufficient for escape. This first failure to eliminate Kenobi only fueled the brothers' determination. In the following weeks, Maul and Savage cut a violent path through the Outer Rim. They pillaged outposts, attacked shipping lanes, and slew any Jedi Knights unfortunate enough to cross their path. But as their infamy grew, so too did tension between them. As their campaign of violence continued through the Outer Rim, Maul decided it was time to establish a clear hierarchy between them. Drawing on his Sith training, Maul asserted the principle of a Sith master-apprentice hierarchy, establishing himself as the dominant partner and Savage as his subordinate, mirroring the power dynamic he had experienced under Darth Sidious. Though he acknowledged Savage as a Sith Lord in his own right, Maul declared himself the master and demanded his brother's submission as his apprentice. The shift in dynamic caught Savage off guard. After all they had been through together, after rescuing Maul from madness and joining his cause willingly, he now found himself relegated to a subordinate position. His immediate reaction was defiance. Muscle memory from his time under Dooku's cruel tutelage prompted him to challenge Maul's authority, to test this new power dynamic through combat. It was a mistake. Despite Savage's impressive physical strength and growing force abilities, Maul's years of training under Darth Sidious had given him combat skills that Savage simply couldn't match. The duel was brief and decisive. Maul defeated his brother easily, forcing him to yield and accept his place as apprentice rather than equal. Though reluctant, Savage submitted to his brother's authority, establishing a clear Sith hierarchy between them. With their internal power structure settled, the brothers turned their attention to building an external power base. Their target was Hondo Ohn'ka's pirate gang on Florum. They captured a starship belonging to Ohn'ka's pirates and forced the crew to contact their leader. The message was simple: join them or face annihilation. But Ohn'ka wasn't easily intimidated. As the brothers attempted to turn his own men against him, visitors arrived. Obi-Wan Kenobi, accompanied by Jedi Master Adi Gallia, a member of the Jedi High Council. The brothers immediately engaged the Jedi in combat, fighting through the pirate complex. During this skirmish, Savage demonstrated just how lethal he had become. In a shocking display of brutality, he impaled Master Gallia on his horns, killing the respected Jedi Council member almost instantly. The loss of his fellow Jedi pushed Kenobi to fight with renewed determination. As the battle continued, Kenobi managed to sever Savage's left arm with his lightsaber, a crippling injury that forced the brothers to retreat. Meanwhile, Ohn'ka rallied his forces and turned the tide against the brothers' supporters. Wounded and outnumbered, Maul helped his injured brother escape the reinvigorated pirates. Their ship destroyed, they fled in an escape pod, drifting through space with an uncertain future ahead. Fate, however, had other plans. The brothers' escape pod was discovered by members of Death Watch, a group of Mandalorian warriors led by Vizsla. This exiled faction of Mandalorian culture had rejected their society's pacifist reforms and sought to restore their warrior heritage. Seeing potential value in the wounded Sith Lords, Death Watch brought them to their camp on Zanbar. There, Vizsla aided the brothers in their recovery. They replaced Savage's severed arm with a cybernetic one and gave Maul new legs to replace those damaged in their escape from Florum. When Savage awoke to find droids working on his new arm, his instinctive rage led him to destroy them. Maul calmed his brother, explaining that these Mandalorians could be valuable allies in their ongoing quest. The alliance formed quickly, based on mutual benefit. Maul proposed a partnership to overthrow Mandalore's pacifist government, which Vizsla eagerly accepted. But Maul's ambitions stretched beyond a single planet. He advised Vizsla to gather more allies, creating a coalition powerful enough not just to take Mandalore, but to hold it against inevitable Republic intervention. This marked the birth of what would become the Shadow Collective. Their first recruitment target was the criminal organization Black Sun. Traveling to Mustafar, the brothers and Death Watch representatives met with the Black Sun Leadership Council headed by Shomit Grunsite. When Grunsite refused their offer of alliance, Savage provided a deadly demonstration of the consequences of rejection. With a single throw of his double-bladed lightsaber, Savage beheaded the entire council in one fluid motion. The remaining Black Sun lieutenant, Zaiton Moj, quickly pledged his organization's allegiance to the Shadow Collective. Similar tactics helped bring the Pike Syndicate into their alliance, expanding their criminal empire across multiple star systems. The Hutt clans proved more challenging to recruit. On Nal Hutta, the Hutt Council declined their offer, unleashing bounty hunters against the Shadow Collective representatives. Savage personally battled the renowned hunter Embo before the brothers eventually captured Oruba the Hutt. When the captive Hutt proved uncooperative, Savage executed him. The demonstration of force eventually convinced Jabba the Hutt and Gorga to join their coalition after a battle at Jabba's palace on Tatooine. With their criminal alliance assembled, the Shadow Collective launched their plan to take Mandalore. They orchestrated attacks on the capital city by members of the criminal syndicates, creating chaos and revealing Duchess Satine Kryze's inability to protect her people. Savage himself participated in these staged attacks, terrorizing civilians before Death Watch would arrive to rescue them. The plan worked perfectly. Death Watch appeared as heroes, defeating the very criminals they had secretly allied with. With public support behind them, they easily deposed Duchess Satine and took control of Mandalore. But Pre Vizsla had no intention of sharing power. Once he secured the planet, he betrayed Maul and Savage, imprisoning the brothers. This betrayal proved short-lived. The siblings easily broke free, recruiting former Prime Minister Almec to their cause. Maul challenged Vizsla to single combat for leadership of Mandalore, a challenge Vizsla accepted according to Mandalorian tradition. Savage watched as his brother defeated Vizsla in their duel and beheaded him with his own weapon, the legendary Darksaber. Some of Vizsla's followers, led by Bo-Katan Kryze, refused to accept an outsider as their leader and left. But the majority of Death Watch pledged their loyalty to Maul, who installed Almec as the puppet ruler of Mandalore while maintaining control from the shadows. The brothers had achieved something remarkable. They now controlled not just a criminal syndicate, but an entire planet with its own military force. From outcasts to rulers, their rise to power seemed unstoppable. But such success draws attention from the highest levels. Darth Sidious, Maul's former master and the secret architect of the Clone Wars, sensed a disturbance in the Force. The growing power of the Shadow Collective threatened his carefully orchestrated plans for galactic domination. Recognizing this potential disruption, Sidious traveled to Mandalore personally to eliminate the threat. The confrontation took place in the royal palace of Sundari. Darth Sidious, revealing his true power for one of the few times during the Clone Wars, faced both brothers simultaneously. Despite their combined strength and coordination, the brothers quickly found themselves outmatched. Sidious wielded dual lightsabers with a speed and precision neither had encountered before. Though clearly overmatched, Savage fought with everything he had. In one moment of desperate strength, he landed a powerful headbutt that temporarily knocked Sidious from a balcony. But such small victories could not change the outcome. As the duel continued, Sidious found an opening. With surgical precision, he impaled Savage with both lightsabers, driving the energy blades through his massive chest. The fatal wound brought an end to Savage's extraordinary journey. As he lay dying in his brother's arms, something remarkable occurred. The Nightsister magic that had transformed him began to fade from his body. His enhanced muscles shrank, his elongated horns receded, and he reverted physically to the man he had been before Mother Talzin's ritual. In his final moments, looking up at Maul with clarity and regret, Savage apologized for not being the apprentice his brother deserved. The tribal warrior who had sacrificed everything to protect his family, who had been used and transformed by dark forces beyond his control, who had found purpose in brotherhood only to have it cut short, faded away as the man he had originally been. His death ignited a new fire of rage within Maul, who furiously attacked Sidious but was quickly defeated and captured. Savage's legacy would live on in his brother's continued quest for vengeance. Years later, Maul would still be haunted by visions of Savage, reminders of his failure to protect the last family he had in the galaxy. The story of Savage Opress, from Night Brother to monster to Sith apprentice, ended where it began with an act of brotherhood. His journey through darkness came full circle, a tragic figure whose loyalties were exploited by nearly everyone he encountered, but who died with the small dignity of finally being true to himself.